Did you know that 75% of people fear the job interview? Hi, my name is Chris Delany. I'm an interview coach and author, and today I'm going to teach you how to pass the job interview. But first, I'm going to share with you my personal journey. I'm a dyslexic loser. This is what I believed about myself when I was in high school. I struggled to read, struggled to write. I also had a terrible lisp, so I also struggled to speak. I left school with no qualifications and no hope. I really thought my career was going to go nowhere, so I took any job that I could get my hands on. One of my first jobs, I got paid £1 an hour. £1 an hour. This was well before minimum wage regulations came in. I used to work in a lot of low skill positions, mainly in warehousing and manufacturing factories, jobs that I absolutely hated. I knew my career was going nowhere, but deep inside, I had a passion for wanting to help people, wanting to make a difference in people's lives, to have an impact. So I started volunteering. I used to volunteer taking disabled adults rock climbing and hiking. I used to volunteer with scout groups and youth groups, anywhere where I felt I could make a difference. And one of the skills I learned early on was how to get people in anxious situations to become confident by visualizing themselves as being successful. And I remember wanting to learn more about how I can help people improve their confidences and overcome their anxieties. So I started reading more books on like life coaching and self-help, and at that stage I was still struggling with my reading and writing. So I went back to school and worked on my maths and my English qualifications, trying to learn techniques how I could spell long complicated words without getting the letters mixed up. It was at the same time that I had a really lucky break in the workplace. Back in the workplace, I was, doing okay. I was on £1.50 an hour or maybe £2 an hour. I can't really remember the exact wage, but it was better than the initial £1 an hour job. And I was working in his warehouse and I was doing quite well. And I got this lucky break. I got a chance to learn how to drive a Thoughtless truck. So the instructor came down one weekend and started to teach a group of us. And me being a hands-on kinesthetic learner, I was fantastic on that truck. I was driving it around the chicanes, picking up the pallets, dropping them back down, reversing back out, driving like an expert. But some of my colleagues really struggled. They was crashing into the pallets, they nearly ran over the instructor, and they was terrified about the forthcoming test. So I went over to them and I whispered how to do the visualization technique, the technique that I used to use with the disabled adults before they wanted to climb a big rock face. I explained this technique. My colleagues got onto the truck, drove on the chicane, lifted up the pallet, put it back down, drove back out again and passed the test. It was a great day for all of us. A year later, the person who came to train us how to drive the forklift truck came back to my place of work and gave me the surprise of my life. The guy came and said to me, "Chris, do you remember who I am?" And I was like, "Yes, you're the guy who taught me to drive the forklift truck." He said, "No, I'm the managing director of the organisation. The only reason I was teaching you to drive the truck that day is because the instructor was off ill, so I came down and delivered the course. And I always remember you going over to the group of nervous colleagues, whispering to them, and then they got in the truck and could drive it like an expert." I talk about this in all our team meetings. We call you the magic whisperer. You whispered something and then these people became expert drivers. And I said, "Oh wow, thank you for the great feedback. That's really good." He said, "Well, I'm here to offer you a job." I was like, "Wow, this is amazing." He said, "We want you to become a forklift truck driving instructor. The course is £3,000. And I was like, "Oh my god, £3,000? Like, this guy is on £1.50 an hour. I have about £30 in my bank. There's no way I can afford £3,000. I actually thought it was a con. I thought he wanted me to give me £3,000, then there wouldn't be a job at the end of it. And he read all of this on my facial expressions and said, "No, Chris, we're going to pay for your driving instructor course, and then we're going to hire you on, mentor you and support you, because we can see something special inside of you." And for me, I think my success comes from, one, following my passion, and then two, taking the lucky opportunities. So I said yes to this lucky opportunity. This job was fantastic. I was living my dream. I was able to help people to be more successful in their career by teaching them how to drive a thoughtless truck. But this job came with some problems. I had to do a lot more writing than I did when I worked in the warehouses. I had to write reports out all the time, and being dyslexic, I really struggled to spell some of the longer words. I remember having to spell separate on a regular basis. And actually, separate is one of the misspelt words in the UK. People either spell it separate or seperate. So people either spell it with an A after the P or an E after the P. And I thought, I need to learn how to spell this word right. I need my boss to be impressed with my spelling and my grammar. So what I used to do when I couldn't spell a word, I'd either write that word out 100 or 200 times and try and get it embedded into my mindset. But that didn't really work for me on a regular basis. I could spell it one day and then I'd get it wrong the next day, and then the day after I'd be able to spell it again. So I needed something more. So I started using visualization techniques. So to spell separate, I imagined standing on the front of a plane with the earth below me, with the wind brushing through my hair, jumping out and flying down, falling to my death until I pull the parachute and the parachute explodes open and I gently land on the earth. And the reason I use that visualization is separate is spelled separate. So it's got para for parachute in the middle of that word. So every time I wanted to spell separate, I remember jumping out of the plane, opening up my parachute and landing safely on earth. I remember to spell it separate. As a careers advisor and interview coach, I'm always saying to people, get paid for something you're passionate about. But one of the barriers to being successful is not just following your passion, it's taking those lucky opportunities that present themselves. Don't let being dyslexic, being nervous, being anxious, having no experience in a particular job role, or whatever it is that's holding you back, get rid of that negative self-talk. Take those lucky opportunities when they present themselves. Follow your passion, take the lucky opportunities, because that will equal success. It's always funny to look back on my life because at school I struggled to read, write. I had my terrible list that I had to get speech therapy sessions for to overcome. And now I write books and I talk for a living, so you can achieve whatever it is you want to achieve. What I want to do now is talk to you about how to be successful in a job interview. The most common type of job interview is the structured job interview. This is where a panel of job interviewers will ask all the candidates the same questions in the same order and then mark their answers based on an internal scoring system. Job interview questions are either behavioural job interview questions or situational job interview questions. Behavioural job interview questions are questions based on your previous experience. Tell me a time when you did this. What experience do you have doing that? Where situational interview questions are future-based job interview questions. How would you handle this situation? What would you do if this problem occurred? Most internal scoring systems have a 1 to 4 point system where 1 is the lowest score and 4 is the highest. The employer will have example answers that they'll compare your answer to decide what point score you get. So an answer that's got little evidence that you meet the job criteria will be scored 1, where an in-depth example that's got data, information and a situational answer will often score a 3 or a 4. The person with the highest points at the end of the interview process will be the person offered the advertised position. So I have a little task for you now, because one of the key things to pass on a job interview is being able to predict the job interview questions. So in a second, I'm going to ask you to pause this video and then complete this task. You need to first think about the job roles that you're applying for. Think about the duties that the employer will want you to complete. Think about the culture of the company, if they're an innovative, creative organisation, or if they like to follow embedded processes and procedures. And also think about the management and leadership style of that organisation. Because all the job interview questions that you will be asked will be based on these three criteria: the job duties, the culture of the company, and the leadership and management styles. By understanding that, you can now predict the job interview questions. Another way to predict the job interview questions is going on LinkedIn, finding someone who works for that organisation, get into a chat with that person and ask, what job interview questions were you asked when you applied for your role in this company? The employer's goal in a job interview is to predict the job performance of each applicant. The person they deem most suitable for the position will be offered the job role, the person with the highest interview scores. The most highable person is viewed based on their level of knowledge and experience, as well as their level of confidence. The employer's perception of an applicant helps them to decide if they're suitable or unsuitable for the role. Your level of knowledge and experience and your level of confidence is in the interview itself, not in the workplace. As an example, you may be a highly skilled employee who can be successful, completing a number of different tasks and duties, but in the interview, if you come across as having a low level of knowledge and experience and you can't communicate your competencies confidently, you're going to be seen as being someone who is inaccurate or unprofessional or inexpert, compared to someone who is highly confident and can communicate their competencies to a level where the employer goes, wow, this person seems ideal for this position. Your interview identity be one of optimistic or charismatic or self-assured. Your interview identity is how the employer perceives you during the job interview process. There are three barriers to the successful job interview. The first is unconscious bias. This is when the employer walks downstairs, meets the applicant for the first time, and creates an opinion about that person based on a number of different factors. This could include their height, their body mass, the clothes that that person's wearing, the tonality of their voice, their gender, their ethnicity, their perceived age. All this data is filtered by the subconscious mind to create an instinctual opinion about that person. I like them or I dislike them. This goes back to our hunter and gatherer ancestors, because when they met someone, they needed to make a quick decision if this person was a friend or a foe. Unconscious bias can also start prior to the job interview. As an example, if an employer knows that someone is dyslexic, that will create an unconscious bias. This is why employers now, to create a fairer recruitment process, are having blind application forms. On the application form, stuff like your name, your age, your address, the university that you went to, if you have a disability or not, is all taken off the application form, and the recruiter reading your form will only read about your skills, your experiences and your past employers, to create a more fairer interview process that unconscious bias can't affect. The problem with unconscious bias is it affects the interviewer's behaviour. As an example, if the interviewer believes the applicant is going to be suitable for this role, I like that person, their behaviour subtly changes so they are more encouraging during that recruitment process. Maybe they'll have stronger eye contact, they'll nod along with the applicant when they're answering the questions, or they'll ask additional follow-up questions to get more information that allows them to score that particular applicant a little bit higher than someone they dislike initially. But some people can turn around that initial dislike opinion about that person. As an example, if the employer doesn't like someone based on whatever number of factors, and remember guys, this is at the subconscious level. It's not the employer saying I'm sexist, I'm racist, or I'm ageist, even though some people do fall into that category. This is a subconscious opinion based on that person's own experiences, beliefs and values. The employer doesn't even realize that they're behaving in a certain way. So let's go back to the example where the employer dislikes someone based on any number of criteria. When the employer asks that first initial interview question, the interviewee can turn around by creating a strong interview identity. You can create a strong interview identity by confidently communicating your competencies. The employee goes, wow, I thought this person wasn't going to be suitable for the role, but I can tell now that they got a load of experience, really good qualifications, and the way they're communicating these skills to me shows that they will be an added value to the team. This then becomes the new filter. The employee wants you to do well because you have a strong interview identity. There are 3 rules to a successful job interview outcome. Rule number 1, identify the job criteria. Now this includes the job duties, the organisational culture and the management and leadership style, because once you can identify the job criteria, you can predict the job interview questions, which helps you prepare high scoring job interview answers. Rule number 2, be a self-promoter. In England especially, we're so reserved. We don't like to talk about our strengths, our qualities and how wonderful we are. But in the job interview, it's expected for you to be a self-promoter, to tell people how you can add value to that organisation. If you don't follow rule number 2, you'll never be offered a job position. And rule number 3, communicate with confidence. It's not what you say, it's how you say it. Listening to this presentation, hopefully I've engaged you with my voice. I sometimes sped up, slowed down, had high or low volume, felt the emotions in the words that I was saying, all to create an engaging presentation. This is what you need to do in the job interview. Communicate confidently. The number 1 fear in the world is public speaking. We hate talking in front of strangers. But this is something you need to overcome to be successful in the job interview. So a couple of things that help you to be more of a confident communicator. 1 is look out for your filler words. They're the ums, the ahs, the so's that we put in between our sentences when we're nervous about speaking. Engage your audience by changing your pitch and your volume. So much of communication is non-verbal communication, so ensure your gestures, your facial expressions and your body language reinforce the words that you are saying. And with all public speaking activities, we always talk about having a strong structure, so a hook, the body of your speech and the summary. And this is what we do with job interview questions. We hook the employer in at the beginning by giving them an intriguing line. We then tell them about how we can complete that skill or give an example of doing that in the previous job role, and then we summarize our particular answer. So that allows the employer to understand exactly what we can offer them as an organization. There are so many ways to help your job interview to be more successful, but one of the ones I really want to pick out is the reframing. So often we get asked the question, can you tell me about any weaknesses? So this is a really hard question because the job interview really should be talking about your strengths and what you can offer to the organization. So what you need to do is reframe that question. Instead of focusing on the weaknesses, instead focus on what you've learned, how you develop, how you've grown as an employee and as a person. Reframing is representing data in a different way. Imagine going into a supermarket, wanting to buy some yogurt and seeing 2 brands. One brand says this yogurt contains 20% fat, and the other brand says this yogurt is 80% fat free. The same data but presented in 2 different ways, which often makes people buy the 80% fat free yogurt. So think about your weaknesses, your strengths, your areas of development and what you can offer that organization, and reframe any perceived negativity into a positive. So as we come to the end, the main takeaway is the 3 rules of a successful job interview. Number 1, identify the job criteria. Number 2, be a self-promoter. And number 3, communicate with confidence. My name is Chris Delany. I'm the author of What is Your Interview Identity and an interview coach at employmentking.co.uk.